My lawyer's email only had 3 words: "Call me immediately." My heart stopped when I heard his voice. He told me the terrible truth about my daughter, that the man she loved, the man sleeping under my roof, had secretly stolen nearly $500,000 from my company and used his computer skills to make it look like she had done it. He was going to let my little girl go to prison for decades for a crime he committed, all while pretending to be the devoted fiancé. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments. The Texas sun was setting behind the downtown Austin skyline, casting long shadows across my office, an office I wouldn't call mine for much longer. After 3 decades of sweat, sacrifice, and sleepless nights, Miller Logistics was finally sold. The papers were signed, the funds were transferred, and a chapter of my life was closing. The feeling was surreal, a mixture of pride, nostalgia, and the thrilling anxiety of the unknown. The number that hit my account was life-changing: $3.2 million. It was more than just a retirement fund. It was security, it was freedom, and most importantly, it was a legacy for my daughter, Emily. Emily was my everything. Her mother, my beloved Sarah, was taken from us by a swift and cruel ovarian cancer when Emily was just 10 years old. From that moment, it was just the 2 of us against the world. I played both father and mother as best I could, and she grew into a woman any parent would be proud of. Smart, compassionate, and with a work ethic that mirrored my own. She got her degree in accounting and wanted to be close to me and learn the family business. Came to work as a junior accountant at Miller Logistics. Having her in the office every day was a joy I hadn't anticipated in my later years. And then came Mark Anderson. He entered our lives at a company barbecue I threw to celebrate a particularly profitable quarter. He was a friend of Emily's best friend, Chloe. I remember the first time I saw him. He had an easy confidence about him. He was sharp, dressed in a crisp button-down that looked expensive but not flashy, and he had a firm handshake. He worked as a senior IT security analyst at a prestigious tech firm downtown, and he spoke about firewalls and encryption with a passion that was both impressive and slightly intimidating. But what won me over was how he looked at Emily. It was a look of pure, unadulterated admiration. He listened intently when she spoke. He made her laugh, and he never once seemed intimidated by me, the protective, sometimes overbearing father. He integrated into our lives seamlessly. Sunday dinners became a tradition. He'd bring a bottle of wine I actually liked, help me grill the steaks, and ask thoughtful questions about the logistics business. He was charming, yes, but it felt genuine. He remembered my birthday with a rare bottle of scotch. When my old laptop died, he spent his entire Saturday setting up a new one for me, transferring all my data and showing me how to use the new features. When he proposed to Emily on a sunset cruise on Lake Travis, presenting her with a beautiful but not ostentatious diamond solitaire, I cried. I truly felt that I could rest easy. My daughter had found her person. The future was a beautiful, clear picture. My retirement, their wedding, and eventually grandchildren I could spoil rotten. The months after the sale were a blissful haze. I was finalizing the paperwork for Emily's trust fund, a 7-figure sum that would ensure she and Mark could start their marriage on solid ground, buy a home, and never know the financial struggles I had faced. Emily and Mark were deep in wedding planning, their apartment filled with swatches of fabric and tasting menus from caterers. Life was, in a word, perfect. The first crack in that perfect facade appeared on a Tuesday. My accountant, Walter Granger, had been my friend and financial conscience for over 20 years. A man of few words and even fewer expressions, he was the definition of steady. So when he called me into his office, his usually ruddy face pale and grim, a cold not dread formed in my stomach. "David, close the door," he said, his voice low. I did, taking a seat in the worn leather chair opposite his desk. "Walt, you're scaring me." "What is it?" He turned his monitor toward me. It displayed a complex spreadsheet, certain lines highlighted in a glaring, accusatory red. "I've been doing the final audit for the new owners, reconciling everything before we hand over the keys," he began, his tone flat, professional. "And I found anomalies. Discrepancies." "Anomalies?" I asked, leaning forward. "Money, David. Money that shouldn't have left the company accounts." He pointed a stubby finger at the screen. "It started small. A few $100s here, a couple thousand there, hidden in inflated invoices to dummy vendors. A company called Peak Office Supplies that doesn't seem to exist outside of our ledgers. It was clever, very clever. But in the last 6 months, since the sale negotiations got serious, the amounts got bigger, and much braver. The knot in my stomach tightened. How much, Walt? In total. He took off his glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose, a gesture of profound fatigue. $474,822.16. The air left my lungs. I felt like I'd been punched. That was nearly half of Emily's entire trust fund. How? I managed to croak. Our controls, we have dual authorization on every transfer over 5,000. I know, Walter said, his voice heavy. And that's the worst of it. The electronic authorizations, they all have your digital signature. That's impossible. I exploded, half rising from my chair. I never approved these. I've never even heard of Peak Office Supplies. I know you didn't, Walter said, holding up a placating hand. But the system doesn't know that. According to the logs, your credentials were used to initiate these transfers. And for transfers of this size, the system requires a secondary verification from a senior accounts manager. He didn't need to say it. The blood drained from my face, leaving me cold and dizzy. Emily was the only senior accounts manager. Her digital signature was on every single one of those fraudulent transactions. No, I whispered, shaking my head. No, Walt, there's a mistake. It's a system error. It's got to be a hacker. I thought so too, David. I really did. But I've traced it. The login credentials used were hers. The transfers were initiated from her work computer during her work hours. The digital fingerprint is hers. The evidence is it's all there. I stormed out his office, a riot of denial and confusion warring inside me. It had to be a mistake. My Emily? My honest, hardworking Emily? It was unthinkable. That evening, I confronted her. I laid the printouts on our kitchen table, my hands trembling. Emily, we need to talk about this. She looked at the papers, her brow furrowed in confusion. Talk about what, Dad? Vendor invoices? Did I mess something up? Her tone was light, oblivious. Honey, look at the amounts. Look at the vendor names. Do you recognize Peak Office Supplies? She scanned the pages, her confusion slowly giving way to dawning horror. Her face paled. No, I don't. What is this? Dad, what's going on? Walter thinks the system shows that money was embezzled, and that it was authorized by you. Her reaction was not one of guilt. It was one of pure, unadulterated terror. Her eyes widened, her breath hitched, and she began to shake her head violently. No, that's not possible. I didn't do this. I would never. Dad, you have to believe me. Someone must have, stolen my login. Hacked me. Something. She broke down into heaving, uncontrollable sobs. The father in me wanted to gather her in my arms and tell her it would be all right, that I believed her. But the businessman, the realist who had built a company from a single truck, saw the cold, hard evidence. It was her login, her computer, her hours. The denial in my heart fought a losing battle against the facts on the table. The new owners of Miller Logistics were notified. They conducted their own, more invasive audit. Their findings were identical. The evidence, they said, was incontrovertible. Faced with a massive financial loss and their own liability, they had no choice. They went to the police. 2 days later, the nightmare became real. The knock on the door. 2 detectives, a man and a woman, their faces professionally neutral. Emily answered, her eyes still red-rimmed from crying. Emily Miller? The female detective asked. Yes. Emily's voice was small, scared. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of aggregate theft and wire fraud. The world slowed down. I heard the words, but they didn't make sense. They explained her rights. The handcuffs came out. The cold, impersonal click as they were fastened around my daughter's slender wrists. I stood there, frozen, a statue of paternal failure, As they led her out of our home and into back of a squad car parked in our driveway, neighbors watched from behind curtains. The humiliation was almost as acute as the fear. And through it all, Mark was our rock. He rushed over as soon as I called him. He held a hysterical Emily, whispering assurances. He held me up when my legs felt like jelly, his own face a mask of fury and determination. "This is a travesty, David," he'd said, his voice shaking with what I thought was righteous anger. "The system failed her. The investigation is flawed. We will fight this. We will get her the best lawyer money can buy." He was the one who found Michael Reeves. "He's a pit bull," Mark told me, his eyes blazing. "A former prosecutor. He doesn't lose. He's expensive, but nothing is too expensive for Emily." We hired Michael Reeves. He was a tall, lean man with a sharp gaze that missed nothing. He listened to Emily's tearful protestations of innocence. He reviewed the mountain of evidence. He was quiet for a long time. "The case they built is strong," he said finally. "Circumstantially, it's a slam dunk for the prosecution. But she's not acting like a guilty person. She's acting like a terrified person. There's a difference. I'll dig." The weeks that followed were a special kind of hell. Emily was released on bail, but she was a ghost. The local news had picked up the story. Daughter of local businessman arrested in embezzlement scandal. The shame was a physical weight on her shoulders. She rarely left her room. Mark was a constant presence. He moved into the guest room to be there for us. He cooked meals we couldn't eat. He fielded calls from concerned friends. He sat with me for hours, brainstorming theories. "It has to be an inside job," he'd muse, staring into his coffee. "Someone in the IT department, maybe. Someone who knew the system and had a grudge. Or a sophisticated hacker who targeted the sale as a payday." He even offered to look at our home computers. "They might have installed a keylogger or something to get your passwords. David, we need to make sure you're safe." I, in my grateful stupor, let him. He spent an hour on my computer, running diagnostics and strengthening my firewalls. I was lost in a fog of despair. Michael Reeves was working, but even he admitted the odds were long. The digital evidence was just too perfect. I began to mentally prepare for a future where my daughter was a felon, her life ruined before it had even properly begun. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon that was no different from any other in its bleakness, I was listlessly scrolling through my email, deleting spam, when I saw it. The sender was Michael Reeves. The subject line was blank. The body of the email contained just 3 words. "Call me immediately." My heart, which had felt like a dead weight in my chest for weeks, suddenly began to hammer against my ribs. This was it. This was the call. He'd found something. Something bad. Maybe Emily had cracked and confessed to him. Maybe the plea deal from the DA was a nightmare. With hands that trembled so violently I almost dropped the phone, I dialed his number. He answered on the first ring. "David, are you sitting down? And I need you to promise me you will stay calm." "Michael, for God's sake, what is it?" I begged, my voice cracking. "I've been through the system logs, not just the financials. The server logs, the admin logs, the network traffic logs. Everything." He began, his voice tight, focused. "To pull this off, the perpetrator didn't just need passwords. They needed to install a custom piece of software on your company's server, a sophisticated program designed to mimic digital signatures and bypass the dual authorization protocol entirely." I struggled to keep up. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying this wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was a premeditated, highly sophisticated cyber heist. It required deep, intimate knowledge of your specific system's architecture. Someone installed a keylogger on Emily's computer to harvest her credentials. They knew the approval workflows. They knew the vulnerabilities." "Who?" I breathed, the word barely audible. "Whoever did it is very, very good," Michael continued. "They routed their connection through a daisy chain of proxy servers across the globe. It was virtually untraceable, a work of art in a criminal sense. My hope, which had flickered for a second, died. So we're back to nothing." "Not quite," Michael said, and I could hear the fierce grin in his voice. "Arrogance is the Achilles heel of every smart criminal. About 6 months ago, your IT guy ran a routine security patch. It broke the embezzlement software's camouflage. To fix it, the perpetrator had to push a small update to the software on your server. He paused, letting the tension build. And when that update was initiated, it made a mistake. For 100th of a second, before it bounced its signal to a server in Latvia, it pinged a local server here in Austin. One single, solitary ping. A digital fingerprint. I was holding the phone so tightly I thought the plastic would crack. Whose server, Michael? The IP address is registered to a Mark Anderson. Silence. The name didn't compute. It just hung in the air, meaningless. Mark Anderson. Mark, my future son-in-law. The man who was, at this very moment, in my kitchen making Emily a cup of tea. No, I whispered. The denial was automatic, instinctive. That's not possible. There's a mistake. His computer must have been hacked. He's in IT, he's a target. David, listen to me, Michael interrupted, his voice deadly serious. There is no mistake. The IP is his. He did this. He used his engagement to Emily to get access to our lives, to learn the business, to gain her trust and steal her passwords. He used his IT expertise to build a perfect trap for her. He was going to let her go to prison for a crime he committed. My guess is he was waiting for the criminal case to conclude. Once she was convicted and the civil suits were over, he'd break off the engagement, disappear, and live like a king on the $500,000 he'd stolen, which is undoubtedly sitting in an untraceable offshore account right now. The revelation was so monstrous, so evil in its calculation, that my mind simply refused to accept it. The perfect fiancé, the helpful IT expert, the supportive shoulder to cry on. It was all a lie, a meticulously crafted performance. Every conversation about business over dinner, every time he fixed my computer, every time he comforted Emily, it was all research and rehearsal for this moment. The sheer scale of the betrayal was suffocating. A primal, white-hot rage erupted in me. I saw red. I wanted to march into the kitchen and beat him to a pulp with my bare hands. But Michael, anticipating this, was already ahead of me. David, listen, he barked into the phone. If you confront him now, you will ruin everything. He's a tech guy. He'll deny it. He'll claim his system was hacked. He'll destroy evidence. We have an IP address. That's strong, but it's circumstantial. We need a confession. We need to get him to admit it on tape. It took every ounce of my willpower to not scream. I took deep, ragged breaths. What do? I growled. We set a trap, and we need Emily to help us spring it. Telling Emily was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. The shock and hurt that washed over her face were devastating. To learn that the man she loved, the man she was going to marry, had engineered her destruction for money. It broke something in her. But then, from the shattered pieces, a new resolve formed. A steely, cold anger. She was in. The plan was set for the next day. I had to play my part. I called Mark into my study. I looked haggard, broken, which wasn't hard. I told him Michael Reeves had called with the worst possible news. The evidence was overwhelming. He was advising Emily to take a plea deal, a guilty plea that would likely mean 10 to 15 years in prison, but it would avoid a trial and a potential sentence of 30 years. Mark's performance was flawless. He collapsed into the armchair as if I'd shot him. He buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. No, David, we can't let her do that. There has to be another way. We'll find the real culprit. I'll hire my own investigator. He was convincing. If I didn't know the truth, I would have sworn his despair was real. The next afternoon, Emily, wearing a microphone hidden in a necklace that had belonged to her mother, met Mark at a quiet, upscale coffee shop downtown. Undercover detectives sat at adjacent tables. Michael and I listened to the live feed from his car parked just outside. Emily was magnificent. She was fragile, scared, and utterly believable. Mark, I can't do this, she sobbed quietly into her coffee. I'm so scared of going to trial. The lawyer says they have so much evidence. Maybe taking the plea is the only way. I just want it to be over. Mark reached across the table and held her hand, his voice a soothing murmur. Sure, it'll be okay, my love. Maybe it is for the best. You're strong. You'll do a few years, you'll get out, and I'll be waiting for you. We can still have our life. But I don't understand. Emily cried, her voice cracking with just the right amount of desperation. How did this happen? How did they get my password? How did they do this to me? There was a long pause. We held our breath in the car. This was the moment. Would his arrogance outweigh his caution? It did. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that was perfectly picked up by the microphone. Look, sometimes the best laid plans go sideways. I set it up perfectly. I never thought they'd be able to trace it back to your computer. But it's okay. The money is safe. It's in the Caymans, untouchable. When this all blows over, I'll be waiting for you. We'll be rich. You just have to be strong for a little while longer. Can you do that for us? In the car, Michael let out a silent, triumphant fist pump. We had him. As Mark leaned back, a smug, almost imperceptible smile on his face, thinking it successfully manipulated her into taking the fall for his crime. The undercover detectives moved in. Mark Anderson, you're under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and witness tampering. You have the right to remain silent. The look on his face, the sheer, utter shock that quickly morphed into panicked understanding, was the most beautiful and satisfying thing I have ever witnessed. It was a picture of perfect justice. But our revenge did not end with his arrest. That was merely the first act. Michael Reeves, true to his pitbull nature, went to work. We used a taped confession not only to get the criminal charges against Emily completely dropped and her record expunged, but also to file a massive civil lawsuit against Mark. We sued for return of every stolen cent, for treble damages, for all our legal fees, and for intentional infliction of emotional distress. The judge, upon hearing the recording, was furious. He immediately froze all of Mark's assets. The money in the Cayman Islands, seized and repatriated. The expensive Audi he leased, repossessed. The high-end apartment he lived in, evicted. Every asset he thought he had cleverly hidden was uncovered and taken. He was left with nothing but the clothes on his back and a court-appointed public defender. He was eventually sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, a sentence twice as long as what Emily would have faced. At a sentencing hearing, Emily chose to exercise her right to a victim impact statement. She stood tall and calm, looked directly at the man who had tried to destroy her, and said with a quiet, devastating dignity, "I forgive you for what you did to me, but I will never forgive you for what you did to my father. I hope you find a way to become a better person." Her grace was the final, crushing blow. He looked down, defeated, utterly broken. We walked out of that courtroom together, free and clear. The money was restored. My daughter's name was cleansed. And the man who believed he was the smartest person in the room learned a brutal lesson about the lengths a father will go to for his child. That is the terrible truth he never saw coming. That was our revenge. If you like my story, please like the video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with as many people as possible. Thanks for watching.